Good morning, everybody. We're here to do another jewellery class this morning. So I've got everything ready. We're just going to wait for a few people. I just lost my connection then. Okay, hopefully that'll stay on. Okay. Hopefully that'll stay on. Right, let me just make sure I've got everything. We'll let people arrive if they're going to. Hopefully we'll get a few more people sign up. If not, then as you all know, you can watch this back. Oh, let me just get rid of that. You can watch this back at any time, which is great. And we've had like hundreds of views on the video since, so that's really good. Whether that's people just watching it over and over again and stopping and then starting again, but it's working. You all seem to be having fun making out there, and that's the idea of this. So yeah. Okay, I think I'm going to get started. So we are going to be looking at making earrings today using a wirework technique or different wirework techniques. I have a selection of beads that I've chosen out to make a few different designs. So I'm Amy, by the way, for anybody that's watching that doesn't know me, from the Oxford Bead Shop in Oxford, Cowley. Obviously we're closed at the moment, so this is what we're doing instead to keep me sane and to offer something back to you guys and to keep business going a little bit. So I'm really enjoying it, so thanks for joining me. Okay, so beads, essential for what we're going to do today, and then the findings that we're going to use. So findings is a generic term for kind of all the little metal component parts that you use with beading techniques and jewellery making. So I've got a few different ones here that we're going to use. Let me get them out of the packs. We sell everything in packs in our retail shop, and I've transferred all of those, well, not everything. If you've been to my shop, you'll know we've got a lot of stuff. But what I have done is I've been transferring over specific projects that we're using within these tutorials onto my website. So you should be able to watch a tutorial, any of the ones that I do from now on or any of the past ones, and order everything from my website. If you can't find something, then email me. Okay, so we've got our findings ready, and then we've got the pliers. So I'm going to start by talking about materials first. So what we're going to be using today are some pins, so head pins. So a head pin is basically a piece of wire with something at the bottom that stops the bead from falling off, okay? So what it means is I can take my bead, thread it onto my head pin, and it doesn't fall off. Let me just turn my light on, actually. I've not done that this morning, so let me turn that on, because I think it does make, and I'll turn that one on as well, because I think it does make a little bit of a difference, doesn't it? There we go. Okay, even though it's lovely and sunny outside. All right, so head pin, piece of wire, something at the bottom stops a bead from falling off, as you can see there. I'm going to be using a couple of different types today. This is called a head pin, which has got a flat bottom to it. Then we've got these, which are really nice, which are probably my favourites out of the two, a ball pin. And with the ball pin, it's got a tiny little bead at the bottom. Can you see that little bead there? So you can see the little bead at the bottom. And then the other thing that we're going to touch on later as well is an eye pin. And look at an eye pin. An eye pin has got a loop at the bottom. So it means that we can hang something from the bottom there. Can you see that little loop? Okay. All right. So what we're going to start by doing is I'm going to show you how to make up just a simple pair of earrings, making a loop and wrapping it above the bead. Okay. So I'm going to use... And it's up to you, it's just choice what you would prefer to use between the ball pins and the head pins, really. I'm going to use a ball pin, so I'm going to make them out of these nice big purple beads that I've got here, these faceted fire polished beads. So I threaded that on. The little bead at the bottom has stopped the bead from falling off. So I'm going to get both of those ready there. All right. So I've got a nice long bit of wire there. Now you can buy these in different lengths. The ones that we sell in the shop are 50mm long. You want to have quite a bit of wire there to work with, especially as a beginner, because if it's too short, it makes it too fiddly and it just makes it too difficult. You need at least an inch, I would say. So what you could do, if you wanted to, is you could put more than one bead on the wire, you know, and then you could have another little bead above it. You see how you can kind of layer them up if you like bigger, longer earrings. So you can layer them up as long as you leave at least an inch of wire at the top. All right, so let's take those off for now. Good morning everybody joining us. Okay, so I'm going to be using today round nose pliers, so they're completely round and taper down to a point. Chain nose pliers, taper down to a point but flat on the inner edge there. Can you see how they're flat and they are round? All right, so I'm going to be using those. The other thing that I might use are a pair of flat nose pliers. We might need those later, we'll have a little look, and then a pair of side cutters as well. All right, so I'm right-handed. So if you're right-handed, you'll hold the pliers the same way around as me, obviously. If you're left, you'll just work in the opposite way. So what I'm going to be describing to you is working right-handed. So I'm right-handed. I'm going to hold the round nose pliers in my left hand. It might look the opposite way around on this video. So I'm going to hold the round nose pliers in my left hand, and then I'm going to grip hold of the wire, leaving a tiny little gap between the plier and the bead. Can you see that little gap that I've left? Look, tiny little gap in there. All right. My wire at the moment, my head pin or my ball pin is pointing up towards the ceiling, and my pliers are parallel to the table, horizontal. All right, so that's how we start it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to grip the end with our chain nose pliers. We're going to pull it away from us, down towards the table. Can you see that? Back underneath towards... Sorry, I lost you for a minute. Are you back? Hopefully you are. Right, so where do we get to? We've pulled the wire, we've pulled it around to make a loop. And look, if I take that off, you see I've got a little loop. But leave it on. Right, so it's still there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to point the pliers up towards the ceiling. Here's my wire. Remember the little gap that we left? I'm going to wrap this wire into that gap. So I'm just going to wrap it a couple of times. Look, that's called a wrapped loop. See, can you see how my loop is sitting off to a side a little bit? So what I'm going to do is, while my pliers are in, pull that back. I keep losing you a bit, guys. I'm sorry about this. There we go. Pull that into the middle and continue to wrap. So I'm just going to wrap it around, still into that gap. Look, still into the gap we're going. Pull it all the way around. I'm going to use all this wire up. I've got a tiny little bit poking out. Can you see that I've got a tiny little bit poking out there? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the chain nose pliers. I need to get rid of your... There we go. With your comments, as lovely as they are, I can't see. All right, so I've got a tiny little bit poking out here. So what I do is I take my chain nose pliers, remember the flatter ones, and I'm going to hold it right at the end of that little bit poking out, and then I can push it down there. Look, tiny little loop, nice little neat wrap all the way around it. All right, and then I'm going to pop it onto an earring wire. So here's my little earring wire. Now with this earring wire, what you can do is open up the loop by gripping right near the loop. Gripping right near the loop and then pushing that open. Did you see how I did that? So I'm holding it here and I push it open, because if I were to hold it down here and try and open this loop, it's going to bend from down here and you'll make a mess of your earring wire. So you need to grip it right near the loop. Open it up, pop your earring on or your bead part, and then close it up. There we go. Look at that. Right, I'm going to show you again. Hopefully I won't lose you at any point. So, bead is on our ball pin. There's our little bead at the bottom there, stopping it from falling off. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grip just above the bead, leaving a little gap between the bead and the plier. And then I'm going to grip the end with our and I'm doing that with the round nose. I'm going to grip the end with the chain nose pliers, pull away from me, down towards the table, back underneath. There's our loop. Then I turn it this way. Pliers it up towards the ceiling now. That little gap that we left, I'm going to wrap into. just a couple of times. Now I need to make that loop central, so I hold it, pull it into the middle and carry on. So carry on wrapping like this until all that wire's gone. If you had a really long piece of wire and it was just too much, you could just snip it off actually. But I'm happy that this is going to wrap all the way in. And then this last little bit here, this little bit that's poking out, I need to squeeze in like that. There we go, little wrapped loop. So then with our earring wire, grip it at the top. These are really nice earring wires. I like these ones that we sell. They're really simple and they've got a tiny little bead there. So that's where you want to grip it. You want to grip it right but on that bead. See, I'm right close to the top there. And then I can hold here, open it out. Make sure you thread that on. So the end of the wire is at the back of the bead. That's quite a nice little tip as well actually. So it's hidden. And there we go. We have a pair of earrings. Pretty, aren't they? Nice little beads. I might just move those ones around. Okay, so that's design number 1. Really simple. Just make it, and just wrapping a loop above a bead like so. All right, now, what about if we want to add 2 beads? So we talked about we could put more than 1 bead on the head pin or the ball pin, so you can layer them up, but making sure you leave an inch of wire to be able to do that loop. The other thing to remember when you're making that loop is to make sure that you're holding the wire on the right point of the round nose pliers, because depending on where you hold it will depend on how big your loop's going to be. Obviously if you do it at the end it's going to be nice and small. Further up towards the inner of the plier it's going to be a bigger loop. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through it again because there are some other things that I want to kind of discuss with you when you're doing that. Okay, so I'm going to make another little pair of earrings using these little pearls and a couple of little crystals, the Swarovskis at the bottom, so they'll just hang nicely at the bottom. Now there's a couple of different ways that you could do this. One of them would be, if it will go through, because pearls have got small holes, you see. So one of them would be to use an eye pin. But because pearls have got a small hole, you can't really go through them very easily with the eye pins because they're a bit thicker. But look, can you see how I've put that one on and there's a little loop at the bottom? So actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. Let's do it with that. Let's change. I'm going to change my design. We'll come back to those in a minute. Let's do one of these. We'll do these and we'll put these crystals at the bottom instead. All right, little Chinese crystal there. Loop at the bottom. So this is the eye pin. I've taken photos of everything. I will be posting them up onto our page after this, so you'll be able to see what these all look like if you can't really see it at the moment. Okay, so eye pin has got a loop at the bottom there. Now what I'm going to do with this is exactly the same again. I'm going to grip above the bead, leaving a little gap between the bead and the plier. Really tight, hold it really tight and towards the end of the pliers. I've got a tiny little couple of mil there at the end so it doesn't come off, but I want a nice small hole, a nice small loop. So grip the end of the wire, pull it away from you and down towards the table. Now one thing to look at when you're doing that is keeping this wire close to the pliers, and the way you do that is by pulling this out as you pull it round. So imagine you had a piece of ribbon and you were wanting to keep it straight as you were wrapping it around something. That pressure that you would pull on it as you were wrapping it round. Okay, so that's what you need to do with the wire. So you pull it out and then you can wrap it round. Pull it underneath. There's our loop. And then I'm going to wrap it. Pull our bead into the middle like we talked about before. And then wrap it a couple of times there. There we go. Now there is a big long bit there. I don't want that, so I'm going to take that off. I'm going to snip it with my side cutters. Now if you look at a pair of side cutters, they've got an indent on one side and they're flat on the other. Okay, so what you would do is you cut with the flat side against your bead, and then actually this little bit here, if you're snipping tiny little bits of wire off, this means that you can put your finger over that gap and it stops the little bits of wire from pinging off all over the floor and people standing in it. Okay, so I'm going to squeeze that in now. Now I've got it nice and close, I can squeeze that in. There. Okay, so now we've got a bead that's got a loop at the bottom and a loop at the top. So now I'm going to take my little BAHcone, which is tiny. You probably can't see it. Okay, can you see it? Look, little 4mm BAHcone. They're so pretty though, aren't they? Okay, a BAHcone is a bead that looks like that. You know, so it's got 2 cones, BAHcone. Right, so then grip above and make a tiny little loop. Again, pull it round and wrap above the bead. Just a little bit. I've got a nice long bit of wire left over there. I might be able to use that for another project. Snip it off nice and close. You see I'm doing that? Snipping off really close. And then tuck my end in. Like so. Lost you again. You're back. I don't know what it does when you watch it like that. Okay, so then I've now got a bead with a loop and a bead with 2 loops. So I'm going to attach them together. Now, because we've used the eye pin on this design, we can open up that loop at the bottom. So the same way that we do it with our earring wires, we want to grip it on the bead, open up that loop, thread that little one on and close it back up again, like so. Look. And then we're going to open up our earring wire again. So we grip it right at the top, remember, twist it open, thread the whole thing on and twist it closed. Look at those, aren't they nice? Look, pretty. Nice to have that little dangly at the bottom actually. It just adds a bit more to it, especially when the dangly at the bottom's really sparkly. But they're really pretty, okay? So for that project we used the eye pin at the bottom first. So we've got our little loop at the bottom there. And then we grip above the bead, leaving a little gap. Grip the end, pull away from us, down towards the table and back underneath. And there's our loop. And then I'm going to wrap it a couple of times. Remember how we reposition our bead? There we go. I'm going to snip that off nice and close. So if you're just joining us, you can watch this back and get all the tips from the first project as well. There's our little loop. Okay, so then I'm going to use my ball pin at the bottom there on my little crystal and hold just above the bead. Grip the end, pull away and down, back underneath. There's our little loop and just wrap it once or twice there. There we go. And then I can snip that bit off. So I've got lots of little offcuts of wire here that sometimes you can reuse them. There we go. Tiny little loop there. And then because we use this eye pin on the bottom, remember what we can do is we can grip the open side with our chain nose pliers, the flatter ones, grip it open, thread that on and close it back up again. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to open up my earring wire. Again, gripping it at the top, thread on the bead and close it back up. There we go, nice little pair of danglies. Pretty. Now all of these, excuse me, I have a little nose wipe. All of these have been made using what's called a through drilled bead. So a through drill bead, the hole runs straight through the middle, like most beads are. If you are, you can see it nicely on there. I don't know whether you can actually, but it's running straight through, okay? Now some beads are top drilled. Now top drilled means that the hole runs through the top of the bead. So like on these ones, like on our little flower, our little leaves here, you've got the leaf running through the top of the bead rather than running through it. Now if I were to thread that onto a wire, can you see how it sits off to the side? Okay, so you wouldn't really want that. We want it to sit that way. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. I might be able to use a little bit of my offcut there actually. Oh, no, it might not be enough. Okay, so what we're going to use for that, you can just use head pins and snip the end off. But what we need here is just literally a piece of wire. So if you were to buy a pack of head pins, for instance, you could use this for both those projects where you're making a loop on both sides. You could make a little loop, but you could also use it for this by just chopping the end off. Or the other thing is we sell packs of wire, so you can just buy a pack of wire and then you've got lots that you can work with. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit of wire and I'm going to measure it and make sure I've got about an inch on each side of that bead. Okay, it's probably more than what I need, but the thing is if it's too small, it just makes it really tricky. All right, like this. And then what I'm going to do is when it's off to one side, can you see how that's like that? I'm going to fold it up just by hand. And I'm going to bend it over the top of the bead there. So you see what I've done is I've bent it, so I've got one running in the opposite direction like that. Can you see that? Then what I'm going to do is with my chain nose pliers, I'm going to take the long bit, because remember we did it kind of about a quarter of the way in, a third of the way in. I'm going to bend that long bit up. So now I've got my bit sticking out here, it's crossing over here, and I've pushed my bent my long piece so it's pointing up towards the ceiling. Then what I can do with that little bit there, I'm just going to wrap it by holding the bead nice and tight. I'm going to wrap it. You have to be careful there that you don't damage your bead, because you can. And with the little dagger beads, which are they're tiny little daggers, the tops are really delicate and you can break them quite easily, so do be careful. So all I've done is I've wrapped that around the long piece of wire. So it's coming round each side of the bead, it's crossed over, and I've wrapped it around at the top of the bead there, okay? Then I'm going to snip the end off. See how I caught that in there so it didn't ping off onto the floor. And then tuck the end in. And then I'm going to make my loop at the top. So like we've already done, grip with our chain nose pliers, pull down, and then wrap. There's a lot of information in this tutorial, so it's good that you can just watch it back. I'm going to wrap it around the top there. There we go. And there's our little loop. I'm going to move it into the middle a little bit, tuck everything in. Wire is quite forgiving. You can kind of push and pull it into the place that you want it to be. What it will do though, if you pull it and then push it back, and then you pull it and you push it back and you pull it and push it back, it work hardens at a certain point and you could break it. So do be careful of that. But there we go. Now we've got our bead. You see how the wire's coming up one side and then it's coming up the back, the front, and then the loop is sitting nicely at the top there. So I could just put that onto an ear wire if I wanted to, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to put a nice little bead above it as well. So let's put one of those on, which is our eye pin. Grip above the bead there. Keep losing you guys. There we go. Wrap around the top. That's it. And then we can attach all that together as we've already done in our last project. Snip it all off, tuck everything in nicely, and then we can thread it on. So open up that loop, thread that on, close that one up. There we go. Let's pop our earring wire on, then I'll be able to show it you a bit easier. Grip it open. So I use my finger and my thumb a lot for pushing kind of wires into, really. It really does help. And then once it's like that, with this, because it's a flatter bead and it's top drilled, you really want to make sure that it's sitting in the right way round. So what I would do is once it's on the ear wire, I would then grip the loops and make sure they're all sat so it all sits the right way round. There we go. Okay. All right, so that's 3 different designs that we've done. Nice simple one with just a wrap loop at the top, and then one where you're joining the 2 beads together using an eye pin and then a head pin at the bottom. And then here we've used an eye pin for the top bead and then just a little length of wire for the bottom there as well, okay? And I mean, just with those designs, there's so many things that you could do. You could make a pendant pieces, you could make kind of clustery pieces and attach it to chains and things like that, which I will touch on in some other tutorials that I'm going to show you. Brilliant. Well, thank you for watching. We are going to be doing a precious metal clay class on Thursday. So I'm going to show you how you work with the clay, talk to you about what it is, how you can take inspiration from nature and push into it, and we're going to have some fun doing that. So I will look forward to seeing you all then. Great. Thank you. Bye.